Hello and good morning. Today I want to talk about the four reasons why I think we are working ourselves to death. I think in this day and age in 2026, I think all of us have that gnawing feeling that work isn't what it used to be. We understood from the halcyon days of like the 60s and 70s where a single income family in the United States could afford a house, a car, and the ability for a fulfilling life to occur. And it is becoming clearer and clearer to so many of us that this is just super more difficult to come by in this day and age. And so I'm going to go over, I think, four reasons why I think we are literally working ourselves to death and why, frankly, we should not anymore. Some of this is ourselves and kind of getting ourselves in the right mindset, but it's also to set the context for how do we solve it. So reason one, hard work is required because we're just often spending too much. We literally live in an environment of consumption pornography. There's just no way around it. And we are all subject to it. We just exhibit it in different ways. Just the notion of luxury. This is why I'm try really hard to stay off Instagram and social media as much as possible. Number one, just the amount of stuff that is flaunted in front of our eyes as to quote unquote living the good life. Now, to be fair, some of these folks are doing genuinely natural things like being in the outdoors and exercise in a way that is healthy. But so much of this is just luxury porn, right? You look at things like the way people are eating like really expensive meals, and let's be honest, some of those meals at times they're more about enjoying something expensive, and so you have some sense of savoir-faire versus it actually being healthy for you. I mean, it's just crazy the amount of food that is just put in front of our eyes on places like Instagram, but also you watch any form of advertising and they're just constantly streaming you, go eat this thing or go eat that thing. And so we're constantly eating out. And the amount of money that we end up spending there is just astronomical at times. Now, again, this is not to say you don't go out and eat, but at the same time, sometimes I think we think, again, of food as entertainment when food really should be fuel. We think of cars. I mean, I think less so these days, but still people riding around in flashy cars at times and going and spending oodles and oodles of money on fuel. It's a ridiculous way, if you think about it, to just spend your money on basically driving from place to place in the most expensive vehicle that you can possibly get. Is that really something that we need to be focusing our lives on, given how hard it is to come by income these days? Purchasing homes. I mean, you look at how people constantly flaunt, this sort of cribs lifestyle. Now, again, it's a lot less so these days because I think a lot more people are hip to it, but there's still that sort of mindset of like, oh, we need to purchase a home, when I think in this day and age, it might be better in some ways to rent. And then there's always the travel porn. Oh my gosh, like how many reels and how many shorts have you seen where people are just in these far off lavish places, and it clearly costs a ton of money to do some of those things. We are so inundated with spend your money on this, spend your money on that, spending money on this, spend your money on that. Look at Amazon. Look at how easy it is to just buy something at the snap of a finger. Buy it now. Again, some of that is good. Look, there are just times I needed a refrigerator filter to make sure that my fridge was putting out cleaner water. It was great that I could find that relatively easily. But having said that, are all of us so controlled about our Amazon spending that every so often there is that, at least that pull to go, oh, maybe I could get that, or maybe I could get that. Why is this important? Because these are the things that handcuff us to constantly spending and then therefore having to have the income to support that constant spending. So one of the first things that we have to do in this new world is to be really radical about where we're spending our money. Think about Starbucks. Think about having that cup of coffee. Even I have, who have a perfectly good coffee maker at home, that would make, I could make it in costing anywhere from like 5 cents to make that cup of coffee. To be fair, it's probably not high fidelity coffee, but it does the job. Do you really need a $6 to $7 cup of Starbucks coffee these days? And imagine for some of you who have that coffee habit, add that up a little bit. I don't want to sound like Dave Ramsey here because I think he's also kind of full of it at times. But yeah, are you spending a lot on that sort of, because that's a luxury item. To be able to spend on that day after day, week after week. We have to get super radical about not spending so damn much, because part of being able to have a sustainable lifestyle is to really be radical spendthrifts about what we're spending our money on. So that's number one. Hard work's required because we just spend too damn much. Number two, hard work rarely leads to more money in 2026. I think the wage slavery folks are right. We, since the 1980s, we have been far more productive than we've ever been, but we just haven't gone up. I am lucky that I work in technology, and that even though I had to look for a job last 4 months, I was able to find one, and it's a pretty good salary, all things considered. It's not FANG tech money, but so many people don't even get even close to that. And for that, I am extraordinarily empathetic, because again, some of it is the hyperspending that we do, but the amount of money that people get for the work they have, for the amount of hard work they have, is just not there. You think of the hardest working people in our country, and they're not the billionaire class. These are the folks who are immigrants, who work day jobs, who are our gig economy workers. These folks really literally put their butts on the line every day to just get things done. You think of folks like nurses and teachers. Who's giving them the big bucks? If anything, it's the hospitals who employ those workers who get the big bucks, and we're going to go into that in a little second too. But it is becoming more and more clear to folks, and this is kind of where a lot of folks are really uncomfortable these days. They see that the harder they work, it rarely leads to more money, because that harder work is just other folks' way of exploiting their labor for the benefit of a business whose multiplier on that labor far exceeds what they're paying that person. I don't think I need to go super deep into this, because for all of us, we know this is true. We know this is embedded in our psyche, in how we see how the top 5 billionaires or 10 billionaires in the country have more wealth than the bottom 50% of the world. Think about that. That is extraordinary. And you could very easily argue that is a massive injustice. So what do we do about that? I think we just have to be hip to the fact that working harder will not necessarily produce more money. Some of this is working smarter. I think some of this means that for most of us, we need to diversify our incomes. And to diversify our incomes in a way that doesn't require our active attention all the time. So this means a few things. Number one, it means things like having some form of an asset that will compound income over a period of time, or at least compounds equity of some sort. The easiest example there is real estate, right? And that's a difficult topic because it requires a significant amount of initial capital, but real estate can be one of those things. Another one, easy, investments. The idea is if you have an investment and you're tracking that properly and you're ensuring that that it's being used properly, your investments are a way to gain passive income, particularly at higher income brackets. But again, the goal there is you need to get into investments at a certain point and keep growing those investments. And effectively, the last part of that is some form of a side hustle that eventually will lead to maintain passive income. That's why you see me doing this YouTube thing. That's why I am trying to start up a side business where I build out some platforms for folks where at a certain point, those things will generate money for me and I do not have to worry about having to maintain them at the same rate as when I was building them. The whole point is that we have to, as Scrooge McDuck said in DuckTales, work smarter, not harder. And I think, unfortunately, that sort of work smarter, not harder, comes from this, the other way, working harder, not smarter, comes from this sort of virtue signaling that I don't think really works for America anymore and doesn't work for people who live here anymore. And I'll talk about that in a little second. So find other income streams that, especially in assets of some form, that will work for you. You leverage those versus other people leveraging you and your time. That's it. Whatever you're doing when it comes to assets, be sure that those assets don't require you constantly to actively look after them like 24/7. Because the whole point of having those is so that your time, you can use it for something else instead of actively trading it for dollars. You want your time, or actively trading it linearly for hours. So that's why we're trying to get away from the hourly wage stuff. We're trying to get even you folks who are in big tech, you are getting paid an hourly wage, like it or not. Don't fool yourselves, especially for all those who live in very high cost of living areas like New York City or San Francisco or some other big technology hub in the United States, or maybe elsewhere. You are trading your time for money. So the only question becomes, how then do you build up a way of living income-wise where you can not have to spend your time specifically to gain X amount of income? You want to make it X squared or 3X after you've done that. And it will do it on its own, or at least to some degree do it more on its own than you having to linearly spend time on it. So yeah, number 2, hard work rarely leads to more money in 2026. Number 3, hard work often leads to worse health outcomes. And the irony of this is that when we have worked ourselves to death, we need that health insurance for the job that will basically fire us because we haven't worked hard enough or that our work productivity is going down. How many of us know somebody who worked their ass to death and then effectively just one day dropped dead? We hear these stories every so often because we get to this point where we think, oh man, if I work hard, I will get somewhere. It's sort of this sort of pie in the sky notion of not just maybe if I work hard, I'll achieve something, but also the fact that working hard and not being able to make ends meet, it has literally put people in the grave. And you and I know this. Number one, it just absolutely screws with our physical health. We're so busy, we don't eat healthy. And because we don't eat healthy, we kind of get into this death spiral of we're less healthy, so we're less able to do the job, which makes us eat even worse. And then it can lead to other things. For some of us, we overwork, so we don't sleep enough. And because we don't sleep enough, we end up not being able to be rested enough for the job, and so we're less productive. Though again, we're not super concerned about productivity here, but for the purposes of holding a job, your lack of productivity endangers the job for which is giving you these health issues. You see what I'm saying? And because of that, we are literally working ourselves to death. And the reason we still then tie ourselves to our jobs is because of our inability to have a healthy lifestyle that includes a reasonable amount of labor per day We need to have it in this country. You cannot really have great health insurance without being tied to a job, because that job is what gives you the health insurance. And as a family dad, this makes me really nervous. If I was by myself or even just with my wife, I wouldn't be super worried about having health insurance because to some degree, because number one, I feel like I live a lot healthier these days. But number two, you don't have to worry about your kids. God forbid, a loved one you have has some accident, or worse, if you could call it worse, some fatal disease or cancer that you didn't ask for, particularly in this world where you're just trying to survive. Get hit with the big C, or some other deadly disease for which, in a lot of ways, you have no control. And in this country, you can go bankrupt for medical bills. That's just a fact. And because of that, it is really challenging to not have work, because that health insurance literally is a fiscal lifeline for your family. And that is so scary. And to hear, I don't have a great answer outside of a political movement that supports a single payer system. I personally find health insurance payers and health insurance companies to be completely rapacious. And I think that to the degree that anybody wants to be free of that requires some radical change. But save that, what can you do? I think the big thing in there is to realize that it leads to my prior point where it says don't work so hard, because working harder does not make you healthier. At least to working hard to excess where your health is suffering. Realize that life is not all about work. Life is about your family. Life is about ensuring that you spend time with the people you care about. In reality, your health is only as good as the relationships you have and the communities in which you are part of. I heard somebody once say that the cure for addiction is not, it's not therapy. The cure for addiction really is community and relationships. I say that to say a lot of us work ourselves to death, and there's really no reason to, especially in this economy when working harder is not going to do it for you and I. So don't sacrifice your health on the altar of work. Don't do it. So hard work often leads to worse health outcomes. And I think lastly, and I think this is very much an American thing, maybe we started in Europe, but definitely a thing. And I want to say this carefully because I think people will misunderstand it. But when we're talking from a, frankly, Marxist lens, we want to emphasize that hard work is not a virtue in and of itself. How many of you are sick at looking at LinkedIn? It's hustle porn. Look at how hard I do this, or look at how hard I do that, or look at all the things that we did to make this thing happen. I want to thank my investors, blah, 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 blah. When you realize that a lot of that was going on is a lot of backdoor conversations, a lot of luck involved, a lot of folks who are already in the know and already in power, being able to leverage those relationships to see what you're seeing on LinkedIn. And the old saying runs true there. A lot of those people are not talking about the truth of some of the ugly that's going around there. And even if that's the case, there's also the issue of how do I say this? Sorry, I just got text on my thing, so I apologize. You may see my glory, but you don't know my story. There's a lot of that going on. And LinkedIn is just as social media as anywhere else. Some would link this, I think actually most sociologists would link this to this idea that Max Weber put out in like the early 1900s called The Protestant Work Ethic. He wrote a book called The Protestant Work Ethic and the Spirit of Capitalism. And effectively, he's saying that there was sort of a virtue placed on hard work. And I don't think it's super necessary to go into the details of sort of the religious or the theological derivations that lead to this notion. But the idea is those who are religious and those who believe in God effectively will work hard. But that sort of working hard notion was sort of a ethical engine by which the capitalist engines of modern economics was built. And again, I think there are some okay notions here, obviously. We don't want to encourage people to be lazy in and of itself. Nobody wants a person to be lazy by themselves. There's a certain amount of work that's involved. I need to work to make this YouTube video. It's not just pop out of nowhere. We understand that things don't happen when you don't do any. Things will happen when you do nothing. They happen because they are the result of progress, of something that you're working on. The issue here, though, is when hard work in and of itself is valued as a virtue, not as the cause towards something happening because of the hard work you put in. And as I explained before, in this economy, hard work doesn't lead to better outcomes for people because of the way the system works. The system works so that people who are leveraging your labor get the benefits and multiply your labor so that they get rich and that you continue to stay on your current wage and stuff. This sort of virtue signaling that so many people feel the need to do continues that engine of folks thinking, oh, okay, maybe I'm not working hard enough, or maybe I'm not hustling enough. I'm not like putting in the grind enough. And frankly, we just got to disabuse ourselves of that notion. We need to disabuse ourselves of that notion where we are saying that to some degree, we are less than human because we're not working hard. Let me say that again. We are somehow less than human because we're not working hard, because we're not hustling. And again, we want to tease that apart gently. We're not saying that it is good to be lazy, but we are also not saying that working hard will provide the economic means to make your life sustainable. And especially in 2026, this is more true than ever, where all these billionaires are literally leveraging the rest of us to make them uber wealthy and uber rich, while the rest of us get peanuts for the work that we do. So my point there is to say, don't be fooled. Don't let these people fool you into thinking that you not working hard is somehow a moral failing in a system that is not designed to reward you for your hard work. Right? So, what do we do here? How do we get away from this notion of it? I think what it comes down to is we stop looking at work as sort of the fulfillment of the human being and try to move away from it, because it literally is destroying us. And the way this system works, we are literally working ourselves to death. Stop spending so much. And that, again, comes to being a little bit less materialistic and saying, hey, look, you don't need to spend so much to have a fulfilling life. Look at so many of our fellow humans across the world. Again, to be clear, not celebrating poverty, because abject poverty in this world is an absolute injustice. But having said that, there are a lot of folks in our world who live with a lot less, but their relationships are richer. And because they are, their lives are much more fulfilling than all of us who have so much stuff. Don't work so hard just to get more money. Work smarter. Don't work so hard, because if you do, you may literally work yourself into the grave. And lastly, again, hard work in of itself is not a virtue. because the world right now, especially in America, the way it works is getting you into this mindset where they're tricking you into thinking that working hard somehow is a virtue, and it is not, especially when all these other folks are not working hard and they're leveraging you. They're leveraging you to make themselves rich. I'm not saying we become those people, but I'm also saying don't be so fooled when they talk about hard work and they work porn you and all that stuff. They give you all this hustle porn when in reality they're not working as hard as they say they want you to work. That's it for this video. Again, just think about year 47. Think about how change is possible. And a lot of that change comes from being in a place where you're not the one getting leveraged. Don't let anybody leverage you ultimately. You leverage other things so that you can live a more fulfilling life. Again, this is year 47. My name is Alan. And again, remember, change is possible. We'll see you in the next one. Cheers.